Welcome to a new episode of Cool Girls Create. It's your girl T Westbrook, and I am here with someone who is very special to me. We went to the same HBCU, and I consider her to be a fellow marketing girl. Okay. Her name is Salina Fountain. Welcome, Salina.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy. I've been loving this platform, admiring this platform from afar. So I am so happy that I get to close out my year with you. So happy that two Black girls that are creatives and business moguls get to connect and fellowship. I'm just so happy. This is the perfect way to end my year. So thank you for inviting me.
I know. That's right. So cheers to both of us being here. Y'all know it's been a wild ride in 2023 when it comes to for me just entrepreneurship, figuring out my career as a millennial, and then doing the whole marketing thing. So this is going to be a great conversation. So let's start here. I want the cool girls to get to know you a little bit better. So I would like to start with how did you end up at Tennessee State? Like, how did you end up at an HBCU? And was that something that you planned to do?
I love telling my HBCU story. Oh my goodness. So, first and foremost, I am an advocate for HBCUs. It's like if you didn't go to HBCU, then where did you actually go? I am very much that girl. And I always like telling people that I graduated from the Tennessee State University, the
Big blue.
only TSU. Now, how I got there is hilarious. I was dating someone in high school, my high school sweetheart, and he had friends that were girls. And you know how it is, your friends connect with your girlfriend. And anyway, I ended up befriending one of his friends. She ended up going to North Carolina A&T. I had never been on a campus of an HBCU before, but she invited me to homecoming.
Change your life, didn't it?
Girl, changed my life. Okay. So I went to homecoming at North Carolina A&T. Shout out to G-Ho. I mean, G-Ho is one of the best homecomings. When they say greatest homecoming on earth, I agree. Now, I love my alma mater, so I can't say that it's in competition, but G-Ho is amazing. So anyway, I went to G-Ho, took the Greyhound bus from Detroit all the way to North Carolina
Ooh.
by myself. I was on the Greyhound for hours just to go to the homecoming. I got on multiple Greyhound buses. And when I am telling you, it was a time well spent when I got there. I remember walking around just with heart emoji eyes. It was my first time seeing the deltas, and I was just so young and just so not aware of anything. I was stepping on their plots to say hey because I'm so friendly. Girl, they was looking at me like, you know, here. But I just had such a good time. So after I left G-Ho, after I left the greatest homecoming on earth, baby, I didn't care what HBCU I went to. I just knew I needed to go to one. So I applied for literally about 50 HBCUs and just went down the list.
Oh, wow.
Tennessee State University actually accepted me. Now, I do want to take a step back because I know that, and I pray that someone that's watching this is in high school or they're thinking about going to college. And I would like to say that it is God's will that I went to a HBCU and that I was thriving in school because in high school, I wasn't a scholar.
Oh, wow. So that's
Actually,
interesting.
yes, in fact, I was actually one of those teenage girls that you would consider a troubled child.
You
So
know,
the bad girls always come out good. The bad girls always come out good.
I was a trouble child too. I guess I was considered a trouble child. Girl, it's so interesting that you say that because I'm thinking about my high school experience. And I don't know about you, but I went to a high school that was considered like an inner city high school. So it was just a public school in a not so great area. And so I had to fight a lot as a teenager. I used to carry a lock to school to just like feel safe and put it in my pocket. And so it wasn't, to me, I felt like I was intelligent, but it just wasn't the right environment for me to like thrive. How was it for you?
So I feel now I did go to some pretty well high schools. Like I went to a lot of, well, all of my high school experience, I went to suburban high schools. So when I was in Chicago, I lived in Oak Park. So I went to Oak Park in the Forest, which is one of like a very prominent high school. When
Mm-hmm.
I moved to Michigan, I went to Utica High School, which Utica High School, that's when I really became like a it girl, I would say. Like I really found myself more, and it was an amazing experience. Like my high school experience changed. But what I will say, looking back, and especially as I'm someone who is a millennial that doesn't have children yet, but want to have children, I think to myself, why was my experience academically not that consistent or well in those environments? And I would say the same for you. It just wasn't the best learning environment because everybody learns differently,
Right.
right? People consume information differently. So I get really excited when I hear people talking about homeschooling more, or is it
The
Montessori?
Montessori. Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Montessori
like
schooling.
even those type of schools for people that are creative, like we have
Yes.
a way of thinking and processing information.
Yeah,
And when
girl.
I got to my HBCU, it was exactly that. Things were hands-on. We were solving real life problems. The environment made you want to level up. I'm sitting next to people like you, and you don't want, one thing about it, you do not want to be a girl at an HBCU that's not smart. And
Cause
that's
we
not
looking at you like, what? But so you made me
right.
think of a question though. So I'm left-handed. So when
Mhm.
you said like learning differently, like I've had to adapt to the world from as long as I can remember just being a left-handed person. But what I wanted to ask you about was, so when you were in school, you were talking about like just solving real world problems and things like that. Do you think your experience uh, helped shape like how you took your approach to your career? So for me, like I had the traditional HBCU experience where, meaning like I had to deal with financial aid. I got kicked out. I lost scholarships. I had to like really find myself and become more independent. But we would just sit in we call it the student center, y'all, but we would just sit in the student center and have like deep conversations. And I feel like at Tennessee State is where I found uh my sense of pride of being a Black woman. So was it similar for you?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I just became who I am. Like I started to really become myself at my HBCU. But it was interesting because I already had a sense of who I knew I wanted to be, but the environments that I was in wasn't appropriate to nurture that spirit.
Right.
When you are when you're in high school, and I think we're talking about troubled children, we throw that out so quickly when you're a child and you have a different thought process,
Mhm.
or if you're challenging someone, or if you don't agree, right? And I'm very vocal, but when I
Mhm.
went to my HBCU, one, you have teachers, right? Educators that are Black women. your mentors and the women that you look up to, are alpha women that are doing amazing things. I just think that I had those necessary people and resources that really fueled that spirit and directed me in the way that I should be using that energy. So
That's
I think
huge.
that is what happened to me when I went to TSU.
That's so good. The direction. Okay, so let's talk about this. So what was your major at Tennessee State? And then let's talk a little bit about your career. So tell me about, the degree that you ended up getting and any special stories there. And then walk me through kind of your career path.
Perfect. It's so funny because everything happens for a reason, right? It's a reason why we're having this conversation today. And when I talk about my past and I talk about my trajectory and where I started, I always get excited because it's a reminder for me. But then I also think it'll be a good reminder of wherever someone is listening from and where they're at, because they can start to, track moments that God has blessed them or opened up doors for them and kind of constantly take inventory. So before I talk about my major, I like to say that after I graduated from high school, my mom actually took me on my first international trip to Jamaica. And I had been to like Canada before, but this was like my first out the country experience, right? Obviously, I'm from Detroit, so seeing Canada is like, yeah, it's out the country, but it's across the street. I've been going to Canada since I was like, what,
Mm-hmm.
5? You know what I mean? So went to Jamaica and we stayed at a resort. And I remember going to the owner of the resort or the property manager, and I was just so amazed because I was like, I want my life to look like this. Like, I want to be traveling. I want to serve people. I want to pour into people. And I asked him, what can I do to own my own hotel? What can I do to own my own resort? And he said, go to school for hospitality. And my mom affirmed that too.
Mm.
Now, God works in mysterious ways. So I don't know if you know, but when I went to TSU, when we were there together, I was actually one of the first people to graduate with the hospitality and tourism concentration, because when I went to TSU, they had just launched the program.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
No, I didn't know that.
yes. So,
Wow.
that's God, like so random. Go to Jamaica, get my passport stamp, get my travel book flowing. And then I'm like, I want to go to school for hospitality. How do I do that? Perfect. TSU has a program that they had just launched.
That is
So
so
I got
good.
my degree in business administration with a concentration in hospitality and tourism.
Gotcha. So what happened once you got that degree and you wanted to jump into your field?
Perfect. So I'm a hustler,
Period.
right? I'm a hustler. I knew for a fact that when I graduated, I wanted to have a job right after college. That's something that I kept in mind. Like, okay, what can I do to set myself up for success, especially during like my junior and senior year? We're talking about career planning and things of that nature. So once I got to that realization of, hey, you're going to be graduating, what's going to happen next? I was really active. So I did the internships. I worked at Hilton Worldwide. One of the board members of the hospitality and tourism program at TSU was also a VP of Hilton Worldwide. So I worked at Hilton in Nashville. Nashville is a very big tourism place. The space that I was in the hotel industry was a great experience, but I wanted to learn more about the hospitality industry. So I did a few other experiences. I knew I didn't want to do wedding planning. Like, that wasn't a thing, but that's under hospitality and tourism as well. But do you remember Airmark?
Airmark?
Was
Yes, I
huge
remember
into it.
Airmark.
Exactly. So Aramark is one of the largest food and beverage hospitality companies in the States. And they also was Tennessee State University also was their client.
Right.
So when I got to my junior year and I was looking for another internship, I walked downstairs to the cab and was like, I need an internship. And they were like, we have an internship program. I was like, well, I'll create one.
Okay.
So I created my own internship,
Yes.
Earmark, at TSU. Then I met Kelly Cottom. Kelly Cottom was a recruiter at Earmark, and she randomly came to Tennessee State University. And God sent her to me. I love her to this day. We haven't talked. I cannot wait to send her this interview, but she changed my life. Airmark, this is towards my senior year now, Airmark had launched a Accelerate to Leadership program, which was for early stage graduates that had just graduated, and they were going to take them through a rotational program. All in all, I got accepted to that program. That's when I moved to St. Louis. So just to give you an update, at this point, I'm an intern at Airmark. Now I'm a participant in their Accelerate to Leadership program. Now I have 2 years of work experience working for the same company, and I started working for them as an intern at TSU.
See, it's so many nuggets there that can be just reiterated, like the power of innovation, right? So similar to you, there have been so many times in my career where I've had to create the opportunity, or better yet, because what do they say? If you prepare for the opportunities, then like you're always ready. So I love the fact that you, and so many times, and starting even in your college career, you created opportunities for yourself and you knew where you wanted to end up, but you tried out some different things. So I think that's so important. So let's fast forward a little bit. So how did you go from um working in St. Louis, right, in the hospitality industry, to where you are now with sales and the business development?
Perfect. So when I went to the Accelerate to Leadership program with Airmark, my focus was doing outside sales in St. Louis. So pulled up to St. Louis straight out of college, had my little what is it, a studio downtown St. Louis, living the best life because cost of living is super cheap. And my skills that I was building in the Accelerate to Leadership program was sales focused. I was an account executive essentially. And it was really well. I enjoyed it. I closed some enterprise deals. I would be going up to different companies and talking to accounts payable and business owners and C-suite, all of the good stuff. But the program was coming to an end. So for me, I would always say I'm a loyal millennial. I'm one of those people that has stayed at a company for a long time. So another opportunity opened up at Airmark, which was a marketing manager opportunity, a marketing manager opportunity in California.
Ooh.
And
Yes.
I remember I seen it. I was like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. Because even when I was in sales, I used to love putting together the marketing and sales materials and putting together the newsletters and things of that nature. And I was like, I really want to do marketing. It's so funny. I always go back and forth. So ended up getting the opportunity, even though I was told, hey, that opportunity is going to be very competitive. You may not get it, all of that, right? I had some amazing letter of recommendations. And this is why it's so important to do the job that you have really well, build relationships, because those are the people that are going to advocate for you. And my team in St. Louis went hard for me to get the role in California. So I ended up moving to California and I was working on the campus of California State University, East Bay. And I was doing all things, I was a marketing manager, but I was leading all things sales, marketing, and business development. Now, the crazy thing about this is remember that internship program that I had, right, at TSU?
Right.
I was reporting to a marketing manager. Now I am the marketing manager.
I know. Look, you said, yeah, if y'all can't see me, I'm doing my little yes girl wave because this is like this for people who are wanting to get specifically into the creative industries, it's not always a clear path to take. So a lot of times you have to create those opportunities, like you said, but also build relationships. And this goes across any industry that you want to work on or whatever you're doing in your life. Relationships to me and my mentor, now I'm hearing my mentor, she always says relationships is currency, right? So and there was
Yes,
something that
yes.
Kanye West said, I heard him say a while ago, where he was basically saying that he wants to get to a point where his money isn't good, meaning he can go anywhere in the world based on relationships, and they don't want to take his money because he has such a great relationship with them. And that just really stood out to me because a lot of times, whether we're going down the corporate path or the entrepreneur path, we like put ourselves in silos, or we may, maybe we step out on faith and get a mentor or a coach, but then beyond that, we're not really focused on building those relationships to have people in the room that are going to advocate for you when you're not in that room. So I love that you said that. So let's fast forward just a little bit. Well, not fast forward, but I wanted to ask you this question because I don't meet a lot of people who have worn the marketing hat and the sales hat. And now I'm talking to entrepreneurs or people who are working in that wheelhouse. People confuse marketing and sales and think that it's just one big bucket of things. From your experience, can you break down for our listeners what you think is the primary difference between marketing and sales?
Yes. And I will say it's so funny because my perspective may be a little bit different. I think that in order to be a really good marketer, you have to understand sales.
Why do you say that? Expound, expound. You're making me excited.
Yes, because I think that, for instance, if someone says that they're a marketer, right? Traditionally, and I would say people that have maybe a different thought process than me. Um, Say you are a marketer and you help small businesses market their brands. Those small businesses want to grow in their sales. So if you're just creating content, if you're just creating strategy and things in that nature because it looks good and it doesn't generate revenue, that's not an effective marketer, right?
Right.
So even when I, put myself or introduce people to my marketing background, I talk about growth marketing. And the reason why I add that growth piece is because anything that I put out is to generate revenue.
Right. Yes. Yes. This is so good because so I do some consulting when I'm not wearing that uh CEO or CBO. And when I say CBO, y'all, chief branding officer. So if I'm not wearing those hats, I'm doing some consulting, like you said, on the small business side. Um, but what comes up is a lot of business owners get burned because they hire people who work in marketing, but they don't understand blah, blah. They don't understand the difference between marketing and sales and how they all work together. So what I like to say is that your overall business goals should inform your marketing goals. Meaning, I'm not going to sit down and talk to you about marketing if I don't understand what your sales goals are, um what your overall business goals are as far as growth, and what is it that you want to achieve with the business. Because like you said, creating great content, that's all well and good, but if it's not getting any results as far as growth or impact, then why are we doing this? And I think that that is a very prominent issue that not a lot of people talk about.
I agree. It's funny because I actually am an adjunct professor. And some of the courses that I teach, and you'll find this funny, I'll tell you this in a second, but the courses that I teach is creating social media marketing campaigns. And all of my students, they get a crash course on selling in that course, right? My other course is writing social media content. They get a crash course on creating call to actions that drive revenue, right? And I'm an adjunct professor at California State University, East Bay, the
Yay!
same place that I went after leaving St. Louis to be a marketing manager. I built a relationship with my now mentor, sister, friend, business partner, who was actually the program director at California State University, East Bay. And I was doing so well as the marketing manager that they invited me to teach their students.
Woo.
This
Yes.
is why it's so important to build relationships and do the job that you were hired for well. And I think that that is something that has been like my secret sauce uniqueness, is really focusing in on the job that I was hired for, right? And doing it really, really well to then advocate for myself, obviously, but then that opened up other opportunities as well.
Yeah, that's so good. I like that you keep saying that. Do the job that you were hired to do and do it really well, because, and this, again, this can be applied whether you are working
Mhm.
or you are in business ownership, because results are the biggest, most influential marketing tool that you can use. Results, receipts. Okay. So if you, instead of you having to worry about constantly pitching yourself and trying to chase sales or clients or this or that, like Salina saying, focus on what it is that you were brought in to do it really well, and then build relationships, and your clients and customers or the people around you, those are the spokespersons. Those are the spokespeople for you. So now you talked about, in order to be a good marketer, you have to understand sales. Now, let's talk about sales, because I think sales it's not difficult, but from what I've seen with my experience with working with small business owners, there isn't any business acumen there. So most people are learning on the fly of how sales are supposed to work, how to get better at it. And a lot of people make some missteps. So I want to talk to you, or I want you to share with our audience, like, what do you think the three biggest misconceptions are about sales?
Yes. So I love coaching founders, and that's actually one of the things I do. So I coach founders and small business owners rather, on sales. So I do that through my platform, Coffee with Salina. I work with founders and business owners one on one, and I also have an accelerator that I take them through. Now, different businesses has a different go to market strategy, right? And when I say go to market strategy, that's a sales, marketing, customer success, all of the functions that sustain and drive a business. A lot of times, business owners and founders, they don't have that strategy of how to get to their ideal customer, right? So an example of that can be they don't have the proper sales enablement materials. And I say sales enablement, that can be as easy as an email list, right? Are you constantly emailing your customers or your prospects? And they don't even have that right in place. Another thing that small business owners or founders don't have is sales scripts, right? That's something that's,
If I could shout.
right? Not having a sales script is very important because sometimes you may not have, for instance, like an e-commerce business, right? E-commerce business, you may not need a sales script all the way. It probably could be useful in a way though, right? Um, but if you are a service-based business, right? I even will say realtors is a good example of this.
Mm-hmm.
You're a realtor and you never made a cold call before, right? You don't have a sales script. So having a sales script allows you to call people, allows you to have a guide of how to overcome objections, how to
Mm-hmm.
push the deal further in the sales cycle, right? So that is what sales is. Sales is not necessarily the most sexiest part of your business strategy, right? Creating a reel may be a little bit more cuter, right? But how to close the deal and close the loop is doing those other things, right? And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, even if you can't do it yourself, which founder sales is important, small business owner sales is important. It's something that you probably have to do in the initial stages before you hire someone, right? But it's very essential. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that some of the tips that I would give a small business owner or a founder is one, have sales enablement materials prepared. Think as easy as the email list and sending out email, marketing campaigns is valuable. Following up on emails. And I think that too, one of the other small tips that I would give would be having a sales script and having a way to have conversations where you're talking with people that lead to revenue being closed.
Yeah, this is so good because it's a couple of things. So when I was first trying to get to that 6-figure mark as a business owner, everybody knows you want to make $100,000. That, look, before I knew what 6 figures was, like the real on it, I thought it was impossible, right? And so, and if you don't know, this is for Shop Black Fest. So this is a company that my husband and I run, and I'm talking to you, Salina, but also our audience. So we were just trying different things, and we invested. Well, I invested in a business coach, and one of the things that I invested in was, in particular, Facebook Messenger scripts, and just some overall, basically it was just scripts. It was like different types of scripts. And it was the first, and it was kind of like this. I was like, oh, here's some scripts. They're like $7. And Greg is our sales guru. I was like, hey, try these scripts out. That was so pivotal for our business because once you have scripts, one, it saves you time, right? So a lot of times I'll get people that are like, I'll ask them. So when customers inquire, whether they're sending you an email, like filling out a form on the website or whatever, what do you do? Well, I have to draft an email, right? No, you don't. You can create email scripts that are saved somewhere, and have somebody or yourself use those scripts to follow up with customers. You can use scripts for social media content. You can use scripts for so many things that will save time and help you run your business more effectively, right? So this is why it's so important for us to have these types of conversations, because I know, like you said, words like call to action and go to market strategy and a couple of other things, but when I'm talking to small business owners, specifically people who look like us, they don't know what they don't know. So this is why, again, this conversation is so important, because I feel like a lot of times we're spinning our wheels trying to figure out how to grow the companies that we've started, but we're not tackling the fundamental business uh, foundation that will help you get there. So going back to the sales conversation, and like, let's talk about just the growth marketing or just that little wheelhouse when it comes to business development. Tell me a little bit more about what your experience has been in that arena. So what have you seen work for some of the clients that you've had, or what are some of the biggest mistakes that you've seen when people are implementing these sales tactics?
So I think that first and foremost, um, business owners, founders, they have great ideas, right? We have great ideas, but it's super important in order to get what you want from whoever you're talking to, an expert. We have a hard time of listening.
Wait a minute, how we get here?
So I think we gotta, that part alone will cause a lot of stress to not be a part of the thing,
So
right?
can you explain a little bit more? What does listening mean? When you say we have a hard time listening, because let's have a y'all, if y'all have been following this podcast, we get real. Like this is real talk because everybody likes to do this fluff foo
Hello.
and we're not getting any results. So what do you mean by not listening?
So an example, I think it would be better for me to share an example. When I work with consulting, doing consulting, my favorite clients are clients that are aware that they don't have any idea about growth, marketing, or sales. I love those people. We work well. They get what they want. I get what I want. They ask no questions. They just are living their best life, right? I have one client, it's a laundromat enterprise business, and he is just like, I don't know, whatever, just do the stuff. And what I'm doing for him is I started off doing all the marketing and sales for his laundromat, but I actually have had him start creating a book of how to launch a laundromat business, and also a course on how to launch a laundromat
Come on,
business.
multiple streams.
This is something that I brought to him. And he's like, oh, yeah, absolutely. But he gives me that expertise space to create and build and almost be a partner within his business for him. I work better that way, right? Where sometimes things become friction is that because people don't understand marketing, because people don't understand sales, you can be a doctor that's about to open up their own practice and somehow you think that you can market. Somehow you think that you can sell. I just showed and shared the audience on a little snippet of my background.
Mm-hmm.
A little snippet. That wasn't even, we went to the beginning of my career. So now there's friction because you think that because you know and have a personal TikTok, you understand sales and marketing. Those are the clients I'm like, I can't do this. Why do you want a Pinterest? No, you should not have all the social media platforms.
Yes, yes, yes. Because you know what? We're going to talk about it because there are so many resources and things out there to support small business owners. But I do find myself in very similar situations where I'm literally having to convince you of what to do, but I was hired with the expertise. So now we are battling for the direction of in which we should go, but you hired me. You understand? So that comes up a lot because as business owners, I think you have to have a strong will, right, to be a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
And because we have those strong wills, we think that we know what's best for our business. Like a business is like a baby.
Yes.
But and you're making me think about my mentor again because she says I'm not working with somebody until they're at the altar. They are at the altar and they're like, I have done what I know to do.
Mhm.
I trust you. I'm going to do what you said because you're the expert. If we could get business owners to that point to just say, you know what? Let me just try it. Let me just test it, because the definition of insanity is doing the same things over and over and over again. But I think because we don't have that education around these topics, what does marketing mean? Not from a theoretical position, but from actually implementing it in your business. What does that execution look like? I think that's where the gap is. So,
And then too, not to cut you off, and then too, you're battling that, but then you're also battling a lot of times if you're working with founders, and I work with a lot of tech founders or small business owners, not only is the lack of information there, but sometimes they also don't have leadership experience.
let's talk about this professional development, girl. Let's get there. Personal and professional development, because I saw on your bio that you are a self-work advocate, and I am too. Because
Yeah.
I I thought I was a know-it-all. Like, well, not know it. I thought I knew everything, but I didn't realize that that was my personality. And if I would have known that in my 20s, I think everything happens for a reason, but I feel like I would have been further along, right? So when you say leadership skills, let's talk about why that is so important to be a lifelong learner or develop those specific skills as a business owner from your perspective.
Yeah. So I would say um my I'm someone that's extremely self-aware to a fact, or to a fault rather. So when I don't see people that are similar in that way, it's a red flag for me. But I'm starting to figure out how to change that about myself, because you can't expect you and other people. But if you go back to my background, like I said, straight out of college, I went to a leadership program. Then when I pivoted and started working in tech, because I used to work at Yelp, and I know we're going to get there, I did another leadership program to become a manager. So I've constantly had these leadership programs to develop myself as a leader that was very intense. So giving feedback, receiving feedback, managing people from behind, all of those things are very important. And then when we get into spaces of entrepreneurship and startups, right, we're hiring people, but we never had the skill to lead people. So now we're in like a position where we're dictating, and you don't get the best return on investment that way. Because if you're constantly turning over talent, especially if you're a startup or you're a small business, then there'll be a lot of holes in your processes.
Yes.
And that's hard to fill up if you are constantly losing people.
Ooh, I'm gonna share a personal story, and then we're gonna just dive deeper into what you were talking about with your experience at Yelp and some of the other places. But so I got my first company up to 6 figures, and then I was like, okay, it's time to hire people, right? So this was 2 years ago. I'm like, I'm ready to go. Let's hire people. So we ended up having about 7 people on the staff. Now, for a big company who has hundreds of people, or they have full-time employees, this is a drop in the bucket. But for someone who is just starting out, managing 7 people without established processes um was, how do I say this in a politically correct way? It was I don't cuss on my show, but it was a fuck fest. It was a shit show. It was it was all the things that, like, the worst thing that you could think of, that's what it was. And it wasn't, and when I was uneducated about, oh, there's a gap in my leadership skills, there's a gap in our processes, there's a gap in communication, I was able to see those things and then go figure out what it is that I needed to do. But before then, I was blaming my staff. Let's just be real. I'm like, why y'all can't get it together? Or I'm doing the coaching, I'm doing this, but why aren't I getting the results? Why aren't we getting the results as a team? And what I found was, as a business owner, one, you start off and you're doing everything yourself. Like that's a natural thing. I actually encourage people to learn to do all of the parts of the business. But then we don't do a transition where now you're focused on having the business run without you and grow without you having to wear all of the hats. So in my story, I was not transferring the knowledge. Our leadership team was not transferring their knowledge to our staff, and we hadn't fully developed processes. So when we say processes, y'all, we are literally talking about the important steps that make your business go round, the important steps that make your business run every day, that generate revenue for you. Like having those things listed out, having a plan. So because of that, we not only had turnover, we had to like let people go, and we ended up in a lot of debt because the work wasn't getting done. We weren't getting the results. So if you're not making money and you have all of these people, your business is going in the red. So it was so many negative things that happened because I hired too early and I didn't establish the things that Salina is talking about when it comes to processes, learning how to manage people. And I would say the third thing that I learned is you have to position people to empower themselves as a business owner when you're building a team. You do not want to become the bottleneck, the red tape in your business, right? And I think that is a huge thing that affects us as business owners. What are your thoughts on that? Because I haven't shared that story, but because I was embarrassed. Because I'm like, but this is the real. This is things that you have to learn in your journey. And I would rather you learn it earlier than later.
I think that that's so amazing. And I told you how excited I am for this conversation earlier on, but I'm as I'm talking to you, I'm also envisioning myself as a listener. And I think that what you're sharing with your audience, what you're sharing with everybody that's listening is just so valuable and so important. And it's very admirable to hear you talk and self-awareness. I think I love that about people. I love when people can talk about themselves in a way that is self-reflecting but healthy, right? Because that's important, especially as an entrepreneur. Because if you don't allow it, no one else is really going to give you the feedback. So you really have to be self-aware. You don't have a manager to report to, right? So they're not going to say, "Hey, your team X, Y, and Z." Like you have to be self-aware. So I think that that's amazing. Very much. I would add something else to this as well. If you don't have the processes in place, right, or the systems in place, I think that that is okay if you hire an expert to build that for you, right? So, for instance, I always tell founders that I should be the first person they hire. And the reason why I say that is because I can build out the go to market strategy, right? I can make sure that even if you don't have a chief of staff, that you have somewhat of the right infrastructure to enable your salespeople. Because if your salespeople, if you hire an account executive or a BDR and they're not closing revenue, they're going to come to you. So instead of them coming to you, someone who doesn't have sales experience, they probably should have a coach or someone that can actually help them. That's where I come into play. right? Building out that processes and then actually hiring and onboarding the right people. So, and I think that's the same even for me. I'm thinking about, and I've been doing some getting some costs out there. But for me, I am not a branding and marketing person at core. Growth marketing, yes, but branding, oh, I want things to look pretty, graphics and all of that. That's not me. That's not what I specialize in. But I have been searching and researching agencies
Mm-hmm.
that specialize in that, right? So then I can get their, costs and things in that nature. Or you can do it like this. Another option. So for instance, I know an example, I know that I'm not branding first. So I know an idea, I can create the strategy, but hey, maybe I can't afford an agency. I'm gonna go on Fiverr, right? And find someone who actually is a specialist in this particular skill that I'm trying to solve for. And that's the option as well for those that, maybe can't afford to hire someone long term, or hey, I don't have this process built out. I actually don't know where to start or have time, right? Okay, perfect. Well, let's hire someone to build out that piece for you short term.
Yeah, that's so good. It reminds me of the saying, sell your strengths and buy your weaknesses. So a lot of times we are trying to do everything and we're not focused on what our strengths are. Um, and we are trying to improve our weaknesses, but that, to me, that's taking the not there are no shortcuts, but if you want to move strategically, I love what you're saying, Salina, about um if you don't have the expertise, hire someone. But then that also gets into the conversation, and I don't know if you have any feedback on this, but dealing with certain business owners, because you have different industries, so you can have a solo entrepreneur all the way up to like a tech startup, and the capital that they have, the resources financially are different. So a lot of times I hear like the solopreneurs or small businesses that don't have that capital, they're like, I can't afford to hire someone. Or how do I know if I'm ready to hire someone like a Salina to help me build out my processes or help with the sales piece of what's going on? Do you have any advice for those people?
Yeah. So, I mean, when you start a business, you already know that you are going to invest in that business. Now, what you invest in first, right, is obviously something that you have to think about. But I think that anything that is a part of revenue generating activities, right, if it's something that's associated with giving you a quick win or helping you close on that first client or that first customer, that is what you should be spending your revenue on first, right? Obviously, like if you are doing something that needs a credential, right? Obviously, you would do that first, right? Like you have to get your credentials first. But after that, whatever's going to help you generate revenue, right? And I think that you know the things that you can do as a solo entrepreneur. You know what things you can do it yourself. And there's platforms and opportunities for that. Like I mentioned before, for instance, me, I have an accelerator with folks that, hey, I want to learn in the classroom. I probably don't have, 101 or consulting, right? Fractional consulting funds, but I do have the capacity to learn, right? That's a lot of people even that take my course creating social media marketing campaigns at California State University East Bay. Those are people that have the time to learn and then do it themselves. So I think that you have to understand how much time you have, what are your goals, right? And making sure that whatever you invest in early on as a business is going to generate revenue, it's going to generate a return on investment.
That's so good. I can't look, yeah, I can't wait to break these clips out for this for this podcast, because it's just these are the things that people don't talk about, and it's just so important for us to just touch on those. So we've been talking for a while. I want to be mindful of your time. So I'm going to ask you this last question, and this is more so about your career. Like when you were working, like we mentioned Yelp earlier as one of the places, but let's dive into that part of your career a little bit more, just for the people who may be interested in moving into creative industries. But also I'm just interested to learn some of the things that you've learned and some of the mistakes that you may be willing to share that you've like overcome when it comes to working in this particular industry.
Yes. So after leaving Airmark for 4 years, I ended up working at Yelp. I always said I never wanted to be that person that didn't use my degree. So I wanted to make sure I worked at a hospitality tech company because that's where I got my concentration in. And I was working at Yelp for 4 years. So when it comes to talking to small business owners, I was facing doing that a lot because I was an individual sales contributor at the time, and I was constantly talking to business owners, helping them grow and market their platforms. So I just got a lot of information and understanding of the small business ecosystem in that way. As far as things that I've learned at that portion of my career, which is most recent, is that after I left Yelp, essentially I started doing my own thing, doing consulting, building brands and products myself. I wanted to get that itch out, and it's been amazing. But I will say that this is also was during the time that people were on social media, and I fell short to this by saying you could only be an entrepreneur or you can be a person that's working a 9 to 5. I will say that the more information that I know now is that that is extremely false. A lot of people are saying, "Hey, I want to be in creative. I want to do everything myself. I want to, build this enterprise business." And I think that you can definitely do that. However, I will say that I have met so many people that have built $500,000 brands and businesses while also working in their corporate function. You can do both. No one ever told me that, hey, if you quit your job and you're about to buy a house, that's probably going to change the trajectory of that, right? You have to have 2 years of work experience or 2 years of entrepreneurship experience for loan officers. That's things that they don't share on social media,
Ooh.
right?
This is so good because when I quit my job back in, so it's going on 6 years now, I walked away from corporate because I felt like I had to make a decision of if I wanted to. At the time, I was breaking out into hives, and I
Mm,
worked in. So I have an accounting degree. If you don't know, for people who are listening or watching, I worked as a financial analyst in the health tech kind of space in banking, and I left because I was literally breaking out into hives. I was stressed, and I was managing my creative endeavors against my corporate job. And so I felt like, oh, I could always go back to corporate America. But
beautiful.
what I didn't anticipate was the struggle bus.
Mm,
Okay. And so a lot social media just glamorizes entrepreneurship. And I definitely am an advocate for telling people to follow their dreams, embrace their passions, and monetize those things. But I agree with you, Salina, that you can do both. It's no right or wrong way to build whatever it is, like build your life the way that you want it to be built. But it just has to work for you.
exactly. It has to work for you. So for me, I'm single, right? If you probably have a partner, it probably may be a different experience for you. And a lot of people don't talk about that. You talked about the struggle bus. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not the girl that's gonna be trying to eat ramen and noodles.
You say you're not the girl that's gonna do what?
Ramen and noodles on the sugar bus to entrepreneurship.
See,
I'm her.
but at least you know that because you got to eat some ramen. I done had to eat some ramen noodles. Hell, I might have some ramen noodles in my kitchen right now because
Oh,
you literally have to be able to make those decisions. And instead of you not knowing that and then getting into this thing, it's good that you know it because now you have a plan.
well, I didn't know it before.
Oh,
So I'm just trying to share with the people.
you found out while you was in the
I
journey.
said, I said, And then, um, because, my situations are different, right? The lack of money that I've had in entrepreneurship, that has been pressure that hasn't only been put on me, but now that's pressure that's put on others around me that I care about, right? Because they're helping me, right? So thinking about all of those things is just very important. Um, you may have to get a side gig, right?
Or a few.
A few, right? So it's so many things to consider. Right now, what I'm doing, because I'm actually thinking about not pivoting, but adding on something even additional to my entrepreneurship journey. And I have a different conceptual plan and understanding. But as I'm thinking about adding another 9 to 5 to my world, I'm also going to be reading a book that I just got. And feel free if y'all want to read it as well. But it's The 9 to 5 Millionaire by
Ooh.
Jamal. I think his name's Jamal C. Coleman. I met him at InvestFest, but he was, I believe, a police officer or a fighter in Chicago, and he has 150 doors that he opened in real estate while working his 9 to 5. So there is opportunity to do both. I think that if you are, and it's all about your goals, right? If you know that you have a lucrative business and you can focus on that full time and it still not impact your world, that I think that that's different. For me, I didn't really have a plan, right? I had a savings, right? And people say 6 months savings. I had probably more than I'm like, oh,
You know,
I
burn
got
through
what?
that.
I think when I quit my 9 to 5, I probably had money coming in, yes, but then I also had maybe like 20K and some change, maybe that went because I also didn't change my lifestyle either. So I'm
Ooh.
still spending how I would be spending, and then no money is coming in. So that is starting to, dwindle down. Now, because I'm a sales girl, I know how to sell. So I got out and started selling, right? But when you are running a business and now you are in survival mode, you also start throwing stuff to the wall, hoping that it sticks. And now you're not operating with strategy, but you're operating in survival mode. And I think that that's another thing to really consider. I think that for me, if you're like me, if I could go back, building something lucrative, having a strategy for that, and then also probably doing both and just hiring the right people to operate it while I'm still having this capital, right? And if depending on what industry you work in, that's helping to fund your business. And I will say this too: a lot of people, especially now, they constantly are asking, "What's the value of having a degree?" Right? What's the value going to school? Should I still go to school? Is an HBCU very valuable? And you just mentioned something. Even if you go to entrepreneurship, we can still go back to whatever careers we wanted. And I know multiple of my friends that have left, came back, and they left, came back to even making even more money. I would even say an example of that is my best friend. She was out entrepreneurship, had multiple children, accounting degree. Literally, I think she applied for 3 jobs and got one of the 3. I'm like, bro, this is why it's important, yes, to still get a degree. She was like, 3 jobs. I'm like, how do you? And then the job she had is not even like a regular job. She's like doing accounting for the government. You know what I mean? So it's like having a degree is important for those reasons. But then two, relationships like this, right? Where we can have conversation, share our platform, you know, collaborate, share resources, things of that nature. Going to college, I would say specifically at HBCU, is an opportunity to build relationships and things of that nature. And we didn't even tell people how we actually met in our organization.
You talking about hypnotized? HIP?
Oh,
Oh, you talking about AK
yes.
Look, we were in. Well, I wasn't okay. Before we get there, because I don't want to forget my point, but I wasn't as I feel like I'm a butterfly, and I kind of like blossomed after college. Salina was popping in college. Okay, I was just dibbling and dabbling. I was super shy.
So
But
humble.
we were involved in some stuff, huh?
You were modeling in college, and you talking about you were super shy.
I was though. It's like Beyonce when she said like she has like an alter ego. Like I've been performing all my life, but then sitting down and having intimate conversations. And you remember I told you I'm from Chicago too, y'all. That's the other thing. So I moved from Chicago to Memphis, and then I was like the outsider for a long time in my life. So I found my voice in college, but I don't think I actually like blossomed until after college because I'm just, that's the journey of just becoming more comfortable in your skin. But the one thing that I wanted to add to what you were saying was that yes, college is beneficial because you can go back to that degree. And there's so many ways that you can maneuver back and forth in your career. But the one thing that TSU taught me, and this reminds me of this video that I saw on TikTok, I think this morning, but it was a student who was basically complaining about her experience at an HBCU, right? And I'm looking at the video and I'm looking at the comments and I'm like, girl, one thing about school is it taught me perseverance. And that's why it's not easy for me to do entrepreneurship, but I have that internal kind of push through personality. And I learned a lot of that from persevering at TSU. So I think that's an important trait to develop is your push throughness.
And if you went to TSU, the TSU finesse.
Okay. The TSU finesse, baby. We're gonna get it done. We're
No
gonna get it
matter
done with
what.
a smile.
No
A
matter, and
C
we gonna turn
word.
up after too.
You said what?
We gonna turn up after too.
Okay. Look. And so you said a couple of things, and then I wanna while I'm just kind of reiterating some things that you said, just think of a word that you can close us out with, something that you can leave with our audience. That will empower them. But just to reiterate some of the things that you said, just talking about if you're listening to this and you may be on the struggle bus, right now, like dealing with entrepreneurship. For a long time, I thought that I was a failure if I went back to corporate America. I would literally turn down opportunities because I felt like I hadn't, if I gave up on this, then what does that say about me? Which ties to another thing about your business, your career is not your self-worth. That's something that I had to learn.
Oh, you preaching.
That's something that I had to learn because, like Salina's saying, you can build a business while you're working your 9 to 5, or vice versa. But it's all about what is going to be the most fulfilling for your life. So if you can build your life in a way where maybe you're doing multiple things, then I encourage that. But don't allow like the feeling of fear of failure to stop you from making the best decision for what's going to work for your life. So those are just my 2 cents. You ready to close us out, girl?
Oh, you just hit the head on the nail. And and not, I know we're about to close out, but what you just said, your career is not your self-worth. I think that that is definitely relatable to a lot of Black women that may be reading this, because my career and my success became a personality trait.
Yes. Oh, I think I just got out of that this year, girl. Like with the help of God and coaching and just working on myself, because it's something that you have to realize. Because what happens is every time there's a downturn or a fire or a fuck up or whatever, you're beating yourself up about it. Or you're saying, oh my gosh, is this a representation of who I am? Right? But it has nothing to do with who you are as a person. It doesn't have anything to do with what you bring to the world, who God called you to be. It's more so about this is the journey that you're on, and shit happens. Life happens. So it's like once you can realize that, I feel like my life, like my days get brighter, because
Yeah.
it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel, because it's so much going on in the world, and responsibility and adulting and business this, career this. And as a Black woman, we just be wearing all the hats and putting on all the loads. So it's just been easier for me to be excited about living once
Yes.
I realize that my self-worth is not tied to my success and accomplishments.
No idols, no idols. And I would say to close this out, um, and I haven't thought about a word specifically, but just even talking and sharing my background, us taking a step in memory lane together, it's just anything that's meant to happen will always happen. And if I could think back on my life, a lot of things was not happening due to my own actions. God opened up those doors. And if I could remember that feeling, the feeling just felt like I wasn't forcing it. So be mindful of the things that you're working on, the businesses that you're working on, your career that you're working on. Should things feel hard? Should they be difficult at times? Yes. But you should have that internal peace knowing that things are happening for you. And I think that when you have that feeling, like even if you're going through a job interview, you know, like, am I forcing this? Or is God opening the doors for me? You would just start to feel it. It's something about the spirit. I think that that's what it is. Something about the spirit where just things flow. And I'm trying to continuously remember that myself, right? Is this me or is this God? Right? And just when things flow, when you have that internal, like you just know what that feeling is. Like, oh, this is
Mhm.
God. Like this door, how it's opening, right? How I just got this degree and how I got this opportunity. This seems more so like a God thing because I couldn't have done it.
Mhm.
And I think that that's just a confirmation that you're going down the right path. And as I'm saying this, I'm taking this in myself as well because this year has been a thing. I said, God, listen, I'm done now. Get somebody else to do it for 2024 because I'm tapping out. It's somebody else's turn. But yes, just find a way to constantly check in and tap in with the spirit. Um, and I think that that will just give affirmations of like you going down the right path and where you should go next.
Yes, yes, yes. So to close us out with, the final word, and I'm just basically following up on what Salina said. If you're listening to this, you're on the right path. You're on the right path, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And we just appreciate you, Salina, for joining us. And this conversation was just so, I don't know if refreshing is the word. It's just like it just felt good. It kind of felt like therapeutic.
Yes, I felt that way too.
It's a little
Like, I had
therapy session.
that sore throat at first. I'm like, I'm healed.
Yeah. So if you're tuning in to this episode of the Cool Girls Create podcast, we thank you for joining us. And Salina T signing out. Peace.
Bye.